Well, during a hurricane, I don't usually run from a hurricane, but by chance with Katrina, I did run. The church was real damn. All those windows that you see boarded up would blow out, but the building itself was secure. This building is 170 years old. I said, God, I'm a faithful man. I said, I'm a man that loves you, and you've been good to me, but I'm not going to clean up this mess. I'm saying I'm not going to sweep nothing. I'm not going to clean up nothing. I'm not going to build nothing. You're going to fix that.
I first met Bishop Shelton December of 2006. He told me about losing his faith when he came back and saw the devastation of the storm. And his church destroyed, his home was destroyed, there's mud in the sanctuary. The neighborhood has been like really rocked. His focus at that time was on providing shelter, living space for volunteer workers.
We've been here for 33 years, and I had a dream one day of feeding the hungry, and another preacher friend of mine had the same dream, and he called me. He said, "Why don't you start feeding the hungry?" I said, "Man, I ain't got enough money to feed the hungry." And I said, I can feed them one day, maybe one day. So I said, I'll feed them one day a week, and we fed them for 19 years, 5 days a week. We spent 400,000 meals in this place. We had over 800 people come stayed in our church since Katrina.
He's just a guy who really cares about the community. And he's a guy who really believes in God. And he's been tested himself. I think the real test of his faith has been that he provided a place for volunteer workers and relief workers to continue doing that work to help others. I'm an East Coast person. I've, made 8 trips now to New Orleans. I've worked in New Orleans. I worked in the whole area, Metairie, Slidell, into Mississippi, some in Waveland, the Ninth Ward, and the Lower Ninth Ward. Most of my time I spent in relief work, especially gutting houses and stuff. I worked in the Lower Ninth and the Ninth Ward. So this time we actually got the chance to go back into the Lower Ninth and look at some of the new construction from the Brad Pitt organization, Make It Right, but Common Ground. Common Ground was first responder, I think, day 2 or day 3 following the hurricane and the flood. And they've been there ever since. They do legal work, they do construction, they do food. I mean, they've done everything.
And what had happened is that 2 of our founders stayed in the city during the storm. But as the flood waters receded, our volunteers began coming in and getting structures. And we've had about 33,000 volunteers to date. At our height, we had, this time 4 years ago, we were having 500 volunteers a week. We were cooking 11,000 meals a week on propane gas stoves in a rat-infested tent behind a Catholic school building in the overnight ward. It was a lovely time for all of us.
We knew we had to go because, we were just praying and asking God, and God told us that this one would come here and we were going to have to leave. And on that Sunday morning we left, and we wanted to go through Bay St. Louis, but we couldn't get on 10. We had to go up 59 and go Mississippi way that way, and all out of the way Jackson. We ended up in Dallas, Texas. It really hit us when we got to Jackson, I think. Jackson, after we had been riding so many hours and not making a lot of progress. So we just all started crying. And people knew that we were from this area. When we were crying and we were watching it on TV, passing by in the restaurant, we getting something to eat. We just started crying because it was coming here.
We met Sister Kathleen at Greater St. Stephen's Church, and she was there to greet us and was all smiles. We went in there thinking that we were going to work on gutting her house, and she was supposed to have it ready when we got there, and that ended up not happening. And so we started helping her work on a community garden that she's been wanting to start for a while now. And she had a beautiful area to put it in, and you could really tell that the community was in need of something that would really bring them together like that. Sister Kathleen introduced us to some people in her community who, like her, needed help with repairing things, and we ended up splitting into two groups. One group ended up staying at her house, and another group ended up helping repair a water heater shed. So we started out basically just mapping out how big she wanted the garden to be, where the space was, and that day we started clearing things, and so we cleaned up around some of the trees that were nearby, and we basically kind of started edging it with shovels, and we came across this one corner that had trash just buried under the surface, and a lot of us tried to, like clear it out, and there was like bags and stuff on top, and I remember Dylan just like kept digging and digging and digging and digging, and it just, there was so much trash in the soil. And so we kind of went home that day bummed out, because it put everything on pause. They did soil tests later that night or the next day, and we could tell that it wasn't going to work that way because the soil was just filled with toxins. So we went back to the drawing board basically, and we tried to figure out what else we could do for her to still make it happen. Somebody had mentioned a raised garden, and so I just whipped out a really quick plan of how she would be able to do a raised garden there instead of using the soil.
So I think it worked out best this way that you got here and was able to test the soil, to know that we have to have cedar wood raised boxes to do our planting in. And so we plan to plant some of everything. I'm looking forward to doing the cabbages and cauliflower and lettuce, Brussels sprouts, even doing asparagus, all these good things, beets and carrots.
We had the opportunity to go with Sister Kathleen down to the Gulf Coast, Bay St. Louis area, and check out the beaches and really see what was going on with the oil spill and experience it firsthand. We pulled over to the side of the road, and it was like, really? This is where the oil spill was. And it was gorgeous. And so we went on the beach and we were walking around, and we found pieces of oil, like chunks of it. It looked like charcoal. Victor was digging down into the soil, and we began to see the different layers, and so you could tell that there was definitely new sand on top of the old sand, and then water started leaching in. The water was coming in and it was clean, and then all of a sudden there was just this bubble of gray sludge that came up, and right away on top of the little pool of water was just this sheen, this oily sheen, and we could tell. It's just still horribly polluted down there, and it's not obvious. And in a way, I think that makes it worse, just because people don't see the need for help down there right now.
I think the important thing for the people in this community is to know that people still are watching, they're remembering, and they're concerned, and they're still wanting to know what their needs are and come back to help. That's the plan. That's the vision for the community. For it to be a gated community, 5-star par excellence, high-class community without the gates. So I thank you all. I thank God for this coming our way. I really do.